I've spent most of my life thinking about the future, sometimes obsessively so, and when I talk about a world where work becomes optional within the next 10 to 20 years, it isn't because I'm trying to be provocative or paint some utopian sci-fi picture. It's because I've watched firsthand how rapidly technology compounds, and I've seen how quickly artificial intelligence and robotics are scaling and improving far faster than most people realize. And when you stand at the center of that acceleration, you begin to understand that we're heading toward a world where machines can handle virtually all forms of labor, not just physical tasks like manufacturing or transportation, but also complex cognitive tasks, engineering, analyses, even creative work. And the truly wild part is that the more these systems improve, the more they contribute to their own improvement, forming this feedback loop that's almost biological in the way it grows. And I remember thinking back in the early days of Tesla that autonomy would take decades to mature, but the pace we're seeing now makes it clear that transformative leaps don't follow linear timelines. They jump, they lurch forward in ways that surprise everyone, except maybe the people building the systems themselves. And when I talk about work becoming optional, it's not that I expect people to stop doing things humans like to create, explore, push boundaries. But the idea of working because you must in order to survive economically is going to fundamentally shift as AI systems take over the tasks we once considered uniquely human. And this is both exciting and a little unnerving because society will need to rethink meaning, purpose, income distribution, and what it means to contribute. And I know some people hear this and feel fear, like machines will make humanity obsolete, but I don't believe that. I believe machines will free us, giving us time to pursue the things that actually matter to us, whether that's art or science or relationships or building entirely new kinds of industries that don't even exist yet. And yes, I've said many times that we will probably need some form of universal high income, something that ensures people don't fall through the cracks while this technological shift happens. But the end result could be a civilization that's more prosperous, more creative, and more focused on exploration than any era in history. And I think about Mars too, of course, because if AI and robotics can handle the heavy lifting on Earth, imagine what they'll do on another planet. Constructing habitats, producing materials, making it easier and safer for humans to become a multi-planet species. And when you look at the big picture, the long arc of innovation, you start to realize that what seems bold today will feel inevitable tomorrow. And the idea that work could become a choice rather than a requirement is not just possible. It's the natural consequence of technologies that make labor abundant, reliable, and nearly free. And this is why I keep pushing Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and everything else. They're all parts of the same story. The story of humanity moving into a future where scarcity fades, where intelligence becomes a shared utility, and where people have more freedom than at any point in human history. A future that's coming faster than most expect, and one I genuinely believe we'll see in our lifetimes. And when I think about how people will adapt to this future where work is no longer a necessity, I imagine a world that feels almost alien compared to today. Because once machines can do practically everything better, faster, and cheaper than humans, we'll have to rewrite the social rules we've lived by for thousands of years. And that's both a massive challenge and a massive opportunity. And I remember sitting in early meetings at SpaceX talking about how rockets could someday fly like airplanes, and everyone thought it was impossible or absurd. Yet here we are landing boosters routinely. And that same disbelief exists right now about AI-driven abundance. But I see it unfolding the same way. Slowly at first, then all at once. And part of what motivates me is the idea that humans need to be prepared mentally and structurally, because the shift won't wait for anyone. And I sometimes get asked what people will actually do when machines handle the work, and the truth is that humans are naturally curious. Give them freedom and they'll innovate, they'll explore, they'll build new cultures, maybe even new civilizations on other planets. And I think about how this transition might resemble the early days of the internet, when people underestimated its impact, when it seemed like a niche tool, and now it's the backbone of modern life. And AI will be even bigger, reshaping not just industries but identities. And it might feel disorienting at first because purpose, for many, is tied to employment, but I believe people will discover deeper forms of purpose. When they're not constrained by economic survival, they'll start asking bigger questions about what they want to contribute to the world, about what matters beyond profit and productivity. And maybe that sounds idealistic, but technology tends to expand possibilities, not shrink them. And I can imagine a child born 20 years from now growing up in a world where robots handle food production, construction, transportation, and even research, where AI tutors help them learn anything at any pace, where creativity becomes the ultimate frontier. And that same child might look back at our time and wonder how we ever accepted so much scarcity and struggle as normal. And this is why I keep emphasizing the conversation around universal high income and ethical AI governance, not because it's fashionable, but because we're approaching a point where failing to prepare would be like ignoring climate change or pretending electrification wasn't inevitable. And as these systems grow smarter, collaboration between humans and AI will become more like partnership than tool usage, with machines amplifying our abilities the same way computers did, but on a much larger scale. And maybe one day humanity will look back and realize that the era of mandatory work was just a stepping stone, a temporary phase between scarcity and abundance, and that the real defining feature of our species isn't labor but imagination, the ability to dream of something better and then build it brick by brick, launch by launch, line of code by line of code, until it becomes reality. And as we push even further into this era of exponential change, I think people will eventually look back and recognize that everything we're doing now, the rockets, the electric vehicles, the AI research, even the brain-machine interfaces, is really part of a broader mission to expand the scope and scale of human consciousness. Because if machines can handle labor, then the real frontier becomes understanding ourselves and extending our capabilities. And sometimes I imagine a future where someone wakes up in a Mars habitat built largely by autonomous robots, walks outside under a sky tinged with red haze, and realizes that they're living in a world that would have been impossible without this great technological handoff from humans to AI. This collaboration that allowed us to go from industrial scarcity to cosmic opportunity. And people often assume that automation will lead to a kind of stagnation where humans become passive. But everything I have learned from watching how people respond to freedom tells me the opposite is true. When constraints loosen, creativity surges, and we start seeing projects and ideas that simply couldn't exist under a work for survival model. And maybe that means new arts we can't imagine yet, or scientific breakthroughs powered by millions of minds no longer exhausted by repetitive jobs. Or maybe it means massive cooperative endeavors like terraforming Mars or building orbital habitats, and I think about how society will eventually anchor itself around purpose rather than productivity metrics, because once the economic pressure is lifted, people will naturally gravitate toward things that challenge them, inspire them, or help others. And yes, there will be turbulence, there always is during paradigm shifts, but the end state could be a civilization that's more resilient, more curious, more outward looking, and I keep returning to this idea that humanity's greatest strength is adaptability. The ability to transform not just our tools but ourselves, our culture, even our definition of what it means to live a meaningful life. And when I talk about optional work, I'm really talking about unlocking that latent potential that's been suppressed for so long by the necessity of earning a living, like removing the gravity boots humanity has been wearing for centuries. And once they're off, I think we'll see a flourishing that dwarfs every renaissance and revolution that came before, fueled by a combination of human imagination and machine capability, working in tandem. And if there's one thing I hope people take from all of this, it's that the future doesn't have to be something that happens to us. It can be something we choose, something we build intentionally, and if we get it right, it'll be the most exciting chapter in human history.